So it took about 2 months for me to actually track one of these things down. But we're finally here. Hi, I'm John from Incendium D&D, and today we're going to be reviewing the new starter set for 5th edition D&D, Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. Let's get into it. Released in partnership with Target, Dragons of Stormwreck Isle is the newest starter set for 5th edition D&D. Now, unfortunately, this product, along with Spelljammer, has received its fair share of controversy, mostly due to some notorious inventory problems that has made it difficult for customers to actually get their hands on this. However, for us personally, it's kind of a blessing in disguise, in that this is a product built for new players. And also, since its adventure is built for levels 1 through 3, I almost wonder if it's a good testing ground for that new Character Origins Unearthed Arcana that was released for 1D&D. But anyway, let's actually dive into the contents of what you're getting for $20 in this box set. So this is not the first box set to be released as part of a partnership with Target. The first was the D&D Essentials Kit, which was an interesting box set because unlike the original starter set from 2014, the Essentials Kit came with a lot of peripherals, like a Dungeon Master screen. It came with 2 D20s so that it was easy for the Dungeon Master to roll with advantage or disadvantage. It also came with a set of condition cards and quest cards, ways to help organize play and communication at the table. What I find really interesting is, by comparison, Dragons of Stormwreck Isle is kind of sparse in terms of peripherals. So these are the exact same 6 dice that you got in the original starter set. Honestly, I mean, I have all these things, but it would have been nice for them to at least include the same dice from the Essentials Kit. Because I just remember Chris Perkins talking about in an interview how that was one of the big lessons they learned from the starter set, was to include enough dice that could actually be used in play. Oh, another thing they had in the Essentials Kit were 4d6, so it was easier to roll your own characters. The next thing we get is this lovely little flyer that basically says, hey, do you want to learn to play D&D? Try to check out some of these online videos. And while most of this is actually an advertisement, I do think it's interesting that they're really trying to push the digital resources that they're trying to provide. Again, the timing of this feels a little convenient in that Wizards of the Coast just unveiled their purchase for D&D Beyond. They unveiled the fact that they're going to have an integrated VTT. It's just some clever marketing. All right, other things we get in this box set. The actual adventure, Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. I've kind of perused it a little bit. It's a pretty cool adventure. One thing I do want to point out that is particularly interesting, and this is something I saw a lot of people get excited and then disappointed about. The characters that are featured in the artwork for this are modernized renditions of the same characters from the 80s D&D cartoon. I know a lot of fans got excited, like maybe the pre-made character sheets would be character sheets from those 80s characters, and they're not. I think it's a cool little throwback, but again, I wasn't a big 80s D&D cartoon fan, mostly because I wasn't alive. One thing I do think is interesting, though, is I'm not going to give any spoilers for what the adventure is about, but it does detail more of a milestone leveling system where you're gaining a level at the end of each chapter. I just find that interesting. I don't think they're really going for a whole experience points progression here. Next, what we're going to be taking a look at is the starter set rulebook. Now, this I found really interesting. So one of the things I noticed that's missing from this that is in the other starter set rulebooks are just rules for character progression, while oftentimes the pre-made character sheets, including the ones in this box set, have the rules for what you get at each additional level that the adventure covers printed right on the character sheet. In the Essentials Kit, at least, they had the details for advancing your character all the way to level 5, mapped out right in the rulebook. This instead is just an abbreviated version of all of the rules you really need to keep track of for the game. And to be honest, I kind of really like this. One of the things I thought was actually better explained in this rulebook, at least how I read it this time, were the rules for hiding. Hiding is one of those notorious gray areas in the player's handbook, where the gist is pretty much your DM can decide if it's appropriate to hide. And there's something about, stealth checks versus perception checks. But these rules are a lot more specific. Adventurers and monsters often hide, whether to spy on one another or to set an ambush. The DM decides when circumstances are appropriate for hiding. When you try to hide, you make a stealth check. Until you're discovered or stop hiding, that check's total becomes the DC for the perception check of any creature that searches the area. It finds you only if the check succeeds. So going back to the original player's handbook where the hiding rules are written, these are completely different entries. So what I noticed is in the player's handbook, it has a similar entry about your DM can determine the circumstances for hiding, but instead of establishing when you can hide, it establishes when you can't. And these are two very different ways to convey similar information. So in the player's handbook, it says, you can't hide from a creature that can see you clearly, and you give away your position if you make noise, such as shouting a warning or knocking over a vase. An invisible creature can always try to hide. Signs of its passage might still be noticed, and it does have to stay quiet. Let's contrast this to the new rules in Stormwreck Isle. You can try to hide if no one can see you. You can't hide from a creature that can see you clearly, and you give away your position if you make noise such as shouting, a warning, or making an attack. But that first line is the key difference. Instead of saying you can't hide, it's saying you can hide as long as they can't see you. It's this little change in language that I think makes it clearer for a DM to be able to adjudicate precisely. To me, there's just something about the layout of this starter set rulebook, the order they decide to introduce the rules, some of the small changes in language, like with hiding. If I was a new DM trying to figure out how to play D&D, I don't think there's a better way than this thin little booklet here. Now, usually with things like this, I also tend to skip over the pre-made character sheets, but after listening to a review from Bob the World Builder, shout out to his YouTube channel, it actually got me curious to look at the pre-made character sheets that are included. And I think these are some of the best pre-made character sheets I've ever seen. The first thing I immediately noticed is that they don't have the regular player sheet format. While the ability scores, saving throws, and skills are kind of all in the same place, this huge box here that kind of describes what your character can do is written in much clearer language. The thing I love about this is how clearly and simply it explains all of the game's major mechanics. For example, there's a large header that says proficiencies, and it says you have the following proficiencies. The rulebook explains what proficiency means. If you have a saving throw bubbled in, you're proficient. It also says what your attacks are. I'm holding the wizard character here, and it says your spells are the best tool in combat, but you also have a weapon you can use. And then it explains how a short sword works. It says in melee, which means a target within 5 feet of you. It's very clear what all of the rules mean. Again, not a lot of the rules are changed. They're just better formatted. Take notes, Watsy.
Write that down, write that down!
And on the back, it does explain things like, it gives like a sample background for who this character is. It even has a hook that ties them to the adventure. But it even has parts for making the character your own, as well as showing that it's okay for your character to have artwork. And like I said before, each of these pre-made character sheets has the rules for levels 1 through 3 in their particular class. Now, in the original starter set, the pre-made characters used the 4 iconic classes of D&D: Fighter, Rogue, Wizard, and Cleric. In the Essentials kit, they also printed the rules for Bard as a potential 5th character. What I think is interesting about these character sheets is instead of a Bard, the 5th character is a Paladin. And that Paladin is really kind of like the quote-unquote tank character. However, the archer character is a fighter. And I think this is really cool because it does show how the fighter, in a lot of ways, is a little bit more versatile than, say, the rogue or the paladin. One thing I also like is looking through the ability scores. For the most part, these characters are quote-unquote optimized. Going back to the wizard, they have a +3 to their main stat, and they also have +2s to dexterity and constitution, which overall, it's good to have those scores be secondary or tertiary in any character build. The one little nitpick I have is that the fighter is built as a dex character.
Not scientifically possible!
They have a +3 dex, but only a +1 strength. And the fighting style built to the fighter that's included is archery, so they have like a +7 attack bonus to their longbow. However, the other weapon that they gave them was a greatsword. And the reason I'm nitpicking this is because if you're a new player, it might give the impression that the weapons that are more effective are the ones with higher damage dice. That tends to be pretty untrue. Instead, I think it would have been better to give the fighter like a short sword or a rapier, something with the finesse property so they could take advantage of their higher dexterity. As I've learned from watching a lot of pack tactics recently, your attack bonus has more to do with your DPR than your damage dice or damage bonus. Because if your attack misses, it does 0 damage. So it's better to hit more often, even if it's a tiny bit less damage, than to miss more often and just not get a chance to hit at all. It is a little bit of a nitpick, but one I figured I should point out. Now the ultimate question. Stormwreck Isle. Who's it for? Is it worth your money? Chances are, if you've been playing D&D for at least a little bit, Stormwreck Isle is going to feel a little hand-holdy, and there's not enough peripherals in it, like the Essentials Kit, to warrant purchasing it. In fact, the Essentials Kit is something I can recommend to any aspiring DM because it has so many dice, and a DM screen, and condition cards. There's so much that you get in that $20 package, it's good for anybody. However, I have to say, out of all 3 box sets that have come out so far, I think Stormwreck Isle is the one I would recommend if your group is completely new to D&D. If you have a new DM and new players, I don't think that there's a product that's going to more clearly explain the game than this one. If you are thinking about getting into D&D, I do recommend Stormwreck Isle, but I would probably also pick up the Essentials Kit. Reason being is after you're done completing this adventure, the structure of the Dragon of Icespire Peak adventure in the Essentials Kit makes it really easy to start porting over to other ongoing games or games that have been just completed, like how Stormwreck Isle was designed. Not only that, but you're getting all the things that Stormwreck is missing, the DM screen, the dice, the things I've already talked about. And if you complete levels 1 through 3 with Stormwreck Isle, well, the Essentials Kit can help your characters advance from levels 4 through 6. So now I want to know what you guys think. Do you have Stormwreck Isle? What are your thoughts about it? Let us know in the comments down below. If you like this video, please let YouTube know. Give us a like, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and have an awesome day, everybody. Bye-bye now.